welcome to another edition of the Isaac Newton Institute podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Patricia Goncalvez, who is, please forgive my Portuguese pronunciation, who is a participant in the workshop we have this week for the SRQ programme. More than that, we've been speaking to Patricia about her career and the direction it's taken so far, and we think it's an interesting story to tell for a number of reasons. So with that in mind, Patricia, I'll let you introduce yourself and you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do now.
Okay, so I'm Patricia Goncalvez, and I work in the University of Lisbon in the in the Instituto Superior Técnico. So let me tell you a little bit about my path, right? Mm-hmm. So I did my PhD, before that, let's say, my undergraduate program in mathematics. There was a branch at the third year. You could choose either applied maths, pure maths, and educational maths. First, I went to educational mathematics because nobody was going to research. I mean, pure mathematics was just, there was no one in my year going to pure mathematics, so I decided to go where everybody would go, so educational maths, to become a teacher at high school. So then, at the last year, I said, no, this is not, I don't like it so much, so I really want to do research, so let's change to pure maths. Then I did another year to get the 2 degrees. And then in pure maths, I had a bunch of professors telling us all the time, talking about IMPA, which is a very nice institute in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, where many of them had done the PhD. And they kept collaborators there, so once in a while they would go there. So we had many people coming from IMPA to our faculty, to our university, and the same thing with our professors going there. So at the last year, in the middle of the 4th year, when we have the exam period in Portugal, I decided to go for a summer school in Brazil. And that's where I got to know what is IMPA and what I got to know what really research, let's say. Because in the university you see it, but it's not as in IMPA, which is really a research center where you see only people doing a master or a PhD. They don't have the undergraduate program. So then I like it very much, and I decided, well, if I will go for the PhD, which I wanted to do, I will come to IMPA. And I had an idea, you never have a clear idea, but I had an idea that I wanted to do either probability or analysis. So I got back to Portugal. I did the summer school there. I got back to Portugal, and then I said, okay, I want to go for the PhD in IMPA. The year after, I went directly from the undergraduate program to the PhD. I didn't do the master, and I really enjoyed it a lot. It's a fantastic place because Rio de Janeiro is already a very nice place, and IMPA is very good. It's a bit competitive, full of men. I think we were probably, maybe 10 women in a universe of 120 men.
Wow.
And most of them, they were not in the PhD, but in the master. So IMPA is a very special place.
And there's a little bit more to this story as well, isn't there? Because it may seem, you're making it sound like it's only a hop over the Atlantic to get to Brazil. Yeah. There's no language barrier, obviously, because you're from Portugal. Yeah. But you had a whole other aspect to your life going on at this point, didn't you? Because, yes, you wanted to do your PhD, but you have a family.
At the time I didn't have. At the time I was single, let's say. Okay, but in any case, I had my mother, my whole family.
And so you're moving, to a really quite different part of the world in order to advance your career, because I think it's fair to say it wasn't possible necessarily staying in Portugal.
Yeah, it could be possible to stay in Portugal, but the thing is that I really thought that Brazil, and I still think that IMPA is a special place.
Okay. Yeah. So this was a career choice, and one you're willing to give up being at home for this step.
Yeah, I wanted. The language is not a barrier, but culturally it's completely different. Everything is completely different, and of course it's a new world. We are a foreigner, and there are many obstacles, but I really enjoyed it a lot. So I think it was a very good investment. Yeah. And then after the PhD, let's say before going to the PhD, it was 2003, the year that I started the PhD, we had the last positions in Portugal where you could get a position, let's say a permanent position, just by having your, not even the master degree, just having your undergraduate program finished, you could get a position as an assistant professor. So at that year, it was the last time that one could get one of these kind of positions. And at the time, there was a difficulty choosing either I stay in Portugal and I will do the master, PhD there, and probably they will hire me at some point, or I will go for a very nice institute, out of Portugal, get a different. You make your life, richer, let's say, because you're going to see other different type of people, and living in a different country so far from Portugal. So at the time I thought that maybe I should do the easier path, but I wanted to go for more complicated one.
Okay.
So I did it. And it's true that when I finished the PhD, it was 2007, and there were no positions in Portugal. So it was completely difficult to get back. But I wanted to get back because I really like Portugal. So I said, no, I will keep trying. So I'll go for a postdoc. So I had a postdoc after in São Paulo. I still stayed in Brazil for some 6 months more, but in São Paulo, which is very close to Rio de Janeiro. But then I decided to go back to Portugal, and Portugal has this kind of research positions for 5 years. So I got one. Then, and at the same time, I tried to work in several universities, but you cannot because there is kind of, I don't understand what is the reason, but people think that if you have a research position, you're going to increase, which is true, your CV in your number of publications and so on. But so if you give to these people the chance to teach, that somehow they are going to complete the CV, and when you want to apply, they will be, ranked first, you see. So this is the way people inside university used to think about people who had the research positions in Portugal at that time. So I could never teach, and I asked them many times, can I teach for free just to have the experience, to put this in my CV because I know it's important, and also to capture students. I wanted to work with students. And no, the answer was always no. So at some point, there was this position in Brazil, in the Catholic University in Rio, very close to IMPA. I knew a lot of people from there. I applied. It was a bit messy because when I applied, and 2 months after, I knew that I was pregnant. And at the time I said, no, I cannot go to Brazil now because I'm going to have a baby. So, but anyway, I asked them to wait. They waited. So I got one position there. And at the time I had my son with 1 year and 4 months. And we were moving to Brazil, but my husband supported me a lot. So he said, no, it's good that you go to Brazil because you're going to you're going to fill all the gaps that you have in your CV. Because in Portugal, when you apply, there is a kind of, how do you say this, like an Excel page, where you have to put your percentage. Well, they give a mark for all the things you do. So bureaucratic stuff, leader of projects, participation in projects, organization of conferences, everything. So many things I couldn't fill because I didn't have access to.
And there was no way to do that at home.
No way to do it. So in Portugal, it was impossible to teach. It was impossible to be chief of department or to have some position in the department, which would count to the administrative duties. And then he said, if you go to Brazil, you will see 2 years there and then you come back and you will get a position. So I did that, and it's true. After 2 years, so I went to Brazil. I stayed there for 2 years. 2 years and a half, in fact. I have a very good position. They were really, really nice. Sometimes I miss Brazil a lot. It's really, really nice. Everything was fantastic. But, okay, I decided...
Was that time away from your husband and your son?
Yeah, no, my son went with me.
Okay. So your husband was the one away from...
Yeah, he was away.
Your son. Yeah.
There was one thing which was... So at the end, I think we were like 3 months here, which were separated. Because it is like this. The calendars are different. And he used to accumulate, so he asked the department to accumulate in the first semester. So from September to February, he would work, he would teach the whole thing. So he was free from March to September. So what happens is that September, so let's say we would stay in Brazil, I would stay in Brazil the whole time except the summer vacations, which is from December to February. I would come to Portugal. But then he would go with us from March to September. So from September to December, he would be here and we were there. We were apart. For our son, it was a bit weird. He was talking with him on Skype many times and looking behind the computer, where is daddy?
And do you think the situation has changed at all? Like that was, as you say, 10 years ago, roughly?
It was 2013,
Okay, so
2015.
actually quite recently, only 5 years ago.
Recent, yeah.
So the situation won't be much different. There'll be lots of people perhaps in your situation who want to get that experience, but who it's almost incompatible with having a life and a family, and you have to make this difficult choice.
Difficult choices, and I mean... Sometimes you think, well, but I'm doing this for what, What is more important? You have to wait. And at some point, I mean, if it was more than 2 years, probably I would have given up. And just many times I tried to give up, in fact.
But you wouldn't let yourself, or someone else wouldn't let you?
Yes, for some reason, because it's so difficult. You try to do something, I mean, and you always have, obstacles. So at some point, I in fact applied to many positions here in London to go to the Citibank or HSBC, to go to the city, let's say. And because at some point you think that it's so difficult to get a job, and at the same time where people are doing applied maths and they suddenly get a very easy they get easily a job in some these consultancy companies with a very high salary compared to our salary. So you see, it's like you have really love to what you do, which is my case. Otherwise,
Absolutely,
you give up.
Yeah,
you give up.
And I think it's fair to say that the world of mathematics, and your part of the world of mathematics, is richer for you having continued with that career. Because you organise a conference, don't you? An annual conference. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, but you mean the conference that I organise usually?
Yes.
Because I'm organising this one here. Right?
Yes, well, of course, you're organising the workshop, which is currently ongoing at the Isaac Newton Institute. Yeah. And then there was one you mentioned to us yesterday, which you tell us more about.
So I usually organise a conference, which started, in fact, because I got one very small project. I think it was like 40,000 euros. And in this project, I asked to have a meeting for 2 days in which we would get the group of kinetic theory and particle systems together, which is usually a community. So there are two communities which usually do not communicate. So, and I thought, well, we should communicate, so let's try to organize it. And at the point, it was just, let's say, to invite the colleagues, my colleagues, let's say, to work with each other, to have a very good environment, and that was it. So it started in 2012, and it is happening since then every year. So in fact, 2 weeks ago, it was the last edition, the 7th edition. It was in Palermo. The year before, it was in Nice, and before that, it was always in Portugal. And it's a very nice environment. So we are like 20 people who get together, and it's very nice discussions. The gender balance is quite equilibrated. And it's a very nice... but, in this conference, many times I invite students, PhD students, to present their work, because I think it's important to give opportunity to young people. And sometimes I hear girls asking me, how can you manage to organize this and to teach and to travel so much with this family behind you? Is it possible to have the two things? Because sometimes it's difficult to understand that you can have the two lives together.
Absolutely.
But which is difficult. Yeah. It's difficult to manage the things.
Because I interrupted you when you were telling your story, and let's say 2013 was where we left you.
Yeah.
The 2 years in Brazil.
Yeah.
You have your son, and your husband was living in
Portugal.
Yeah. But since then, your family has grown larger.
Yeah.
And now you have 2 more children.
It's true. Yeah. So 2015, I got pregnant of my second, which is it's a daughter. The first one is a boy. So yes, she was born in 2015, and then decided to take the maternity leave in Portugal. So I stayed there for 6 months. It was 6 months maternity leave, and while I was in Portugal, I continued to apply. So every time there was a position in Portugal, anywhere in the country, I was applying. And I applied, and many times I had many situations which are not very good, but things like losing competitions for people which are not even in maths. In Portugal you can have many kinds of stories. And in 2015, yes, it was 2015, I applied to this ERC, these millenary grants from the European Research Council. I applied to one, and I had kind of... so at the same time I was in Portugal, I used to have this research position that I mentioned before, right? So I had this research position, and because I said, no, I don't want to leave to Brazil anymore, because now I have 2 kids. And with 2 kids, my husband here, it doesn't make any sense. So I activated the research position, and I stayed in Portugal after my daughter was born. And then I said, well, so I will apply to these ERC starting grants. Maybe this changes my life, but I had idea that I would never get it, because it's very, very hard. And I applied. It was in November 2015, and in December 2015, 1 month after, I just applied, so I didn't know the results, but 1 month after, I got the job that I have, which is associate professor in technical, let's say. And at the same time, I got 2 jobs. I applied to one as associate and another one as assistant, and I got the 2 in the same university, so I could choose. So at the end, after 9 years of searching a job, when I finally found one...
2 come at once.
Yeah, I got 2, and I could choose. Of course, I choose associate, because you get a bigger salary. And some months after, so it was, almost a year. So in September 2016, so let's say basically 1 year after, I got to know that I got the ERC starting grant, which completely changed my life. Because then, some competitions in Portugal, I even have results saying that I am completely excluded from the competition because I am not a probabilist. And of course, I am a probabilist, and I try to complain with the jury and say, look, but I am a probabilist, so what is the definition of a probabilist? And so I have, because of course I know that they open a position and they have someone that they want to hire, so if I am on the way, let's say they want to kick me out, so the best thing to do is to say that I'm not from the field, which is false, but you complain and they say that they decide whatever they want, so I was very mad, but since I got to do the two jobs at the same time, I didn't care. And after the RC, it was very nice. So, I mean, it is very nice because it's like a world recognition. So it has to be a recognition from Europe so that in Portugal people can recognize what I do, you see. And it was very nice because after that I had some job offers. And so suddenly everything changed. But it's not an easy, let's say, up to let's say 9 years, which is the time that it took for me to get a job and to get the RC at the same time, basically. It was a hard...
Yeah, it's a really interesting story to hear, and probably quite a familiar one, I think, to... I think particularly to a lot of women mathematicians. Mm-hmm. It seems as though, from a lot of the conversations you have with a lot of women in academia, it seems as though there are so many barriers thrown in their way which perhaps aren't faced by their male counterparts. Yeah. Would you say that's fair to say? And the idea of having a family and having a career and making that work, from what you've told us just now, it required a lot of dedication and a lot of moments where you really genuinely considered giving up. Yeah. So it's a really interesting story to hear, and it's an inspiring one to hear, I think. Yeah. And I mean, how do you feel looking back on it now? You're still a young woman, but looking back on what you've gone through now, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about the prospects of other of women younger than yourself that want to get into the position that you found yourself?
I think that Portugal is a special place, so I don't think that someone. I mean, if I didn't want really to get back to Portugal, I could say, well, I stay in Brazil, or I can go to some other place in the world, and I don't think it would be so difficult to get a position because Portugal is really. I think Portugal and Italy are like similar and very special. It was very hard for me. I can tell you that one of the things that sometimes I look back and I think, well, maybe I should have spent more time with my son, because I think he's the one that hates my computer. Sometimes he says, that is your best friend, is your computer, because when he was young, I really dedicated to research. So I think that, there was a bit of... not that I didn't do my mother duties, let's say, but because you need really to dedicate. You really need sometimes to say, well, this weekend I will have to focus on something that I have to do. And then you can share with your husband your tasks, but it's really a complete 100% of dedication to your work, you see. And now it's not like that anymore because I don't need so much, I don't need to have so many publications and, all these fever, let's say. Yeah, I'm not in a rush, let's say. But with a family, you really, now what I realize is that before having kids, I could do my work, but if I don't finish, it is okay. Tomorrow I get back, I sit and I repeat it and I try to continue. Now with kids, I'm trying to be very organized. I have to finish this task because I go home and I know that I don't have time at home to see anything. Sometimes I don't even have time to open the computer because I have 3 small kids around. It's impossible. So I try to be much more organized and to do things now more like a machine sometimes. To sit and I have to do this, put all my list of tasks to do. So for many times I see girls who ask me, how is it possible? So I think it's possible. You just have to not give up, be persistent, be optimistic. I think one can do it. Yeah, I think so.
Well, Patricia, it's been a real pleasure to hear that story, and thank you for sharing it with us. I hope the rest of the workshop goes well. There's only one day left. You've got tonight as well, I suppose, to interact with the other participants. But you must be very proud because it's gone very well and very well attended.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.